Hello everyone. Welcome to the Giacomino Alaska Cruise 2025 video. Thanks for watching. Our cruise departed out of Seattle, so after flying in the previous night, we made our way to the port to embark on the ship. This is, of course, always the best day of the cruise. After getting through the terminal, it was time to board the ship and meet with the other members of the family to explore the ship. This was a Quantum class ship, and we found it very spacious, although there were a lot of people in the ship. One of the best things about sailing out of Seattle is the incredible city views, which we took in from the top deck of the ship. To get to our favorite spot on the top deck of the ship, we had to go through the Seaplex, which was an indoor multiplayer place where people could ride bumper cars, play sports, or do a variety of other activities and games. Once out on the top deck, though, we can see that the beautiful city of Seattle is right within reach. This proved to be one of our favorite days for whenever we had any scenic cruising, as we could look out and see in all directions. During that first day, we were able to see a lot of different boats and yachts. Our room was directly in the back of the ship, which gave us great 270-degree views of everything that we were cruising through. Honestly, this was one of my favorite rooms that I've ever stayed in on a cruise ship, just because the views are so incredible. What you're seeing here is our sail away from Seattle, and on this day, it was incredibly nice out. In the distance, you can see Seattle and the mountains in the background. Day 2 was just a cruising day while we were getting up to Alaska. This day, we decided to explore the ship and enjoy some of the amenities that it offered. The first stop was the Royal Esplanade, which is kind of like the main area of the ship. Honestly, it looks a little bit like an indoor mall, but it was the place where there were most of the bars, shops, and things to do that were occurring on the ship, especially during sea days. As you can see, it was very busy since everybody had to stay inside. It was a little bit chilly out, and so most people were inside of the ship enjoying some of the entertainment. Another one of our favorite venues that we kept going back to was 270. Now this is a lounge that is in the back of the ship that is named 270 because it has two 270-degree views, just like our room did. And this is a place that is also a theater. Also during this day, there was bumper cars that were available. Tally and I did not participate in the bumper cars, but the rest of the family did, especially the kids, which we can see here. They seem to enjoy it a lot. Our favorite bar on the ship had to be the Schooner Bar. This is a piano bar where we could get one of our favorite drinks, the Lavender Daiquiri. And of course, after our day of hard work, we ended the night in the music hall, where there was always a live band and dancing going on. Our next day was Sitka. This was our first port day, and it happened to be a very rainy, dreary day. As you'll see from the video here, it rained pretty much the entire day, and we were soaked by the end of it. However, there was an incredible beauty with it, especially with the low clouds and the fog that we saw throughout the day. Once we got off the ship, we made our way to a bus, and the bus took us to the Fortress of the Bear, which we'll see here in just a second. The Fortress of a Bear is a place that came together because there were a lot of different bear cubs and injured bears, and there was not a safe place previously for these bears to go. So this is really a bear rehabilitation center, although currently in Alaska they cannot release the bears back into the wild, and so they just keep the bears that they do get, and they make this a forever home for now. While it was quite crowded, the bears seemed to enjoy the interaction with the people. They kept coming up to the bridge and where we were standing above them and looking at us. Now, there were two sides to the enclosure here. There was an east and west enclosure, which we can see. One of the enclosures had 2 bears, which is the one that we're looking at, and the other one did have 3 bears. We learned that this used to be an old pulp mill, or an old paper mill, I think, where they would have these giant pools of pulp. And so when that got decommissioned, they turned this into the bear sanctuary known as Fortress of the Bear. After Fortress of the Bear, we had a few more hours in town, so we came back to town and we went on a little walk because very close to the center of town there is a little bit of a mini national park where you could go in, you could walk through some of the wilderness, and more importantly, you could see a lot of different totem poles that some of the native villages had put together either years before or even hundreds of years before. When we were in port, the tide was out quite a bit, so people took advantage of that and climbed on these exposed rocks as well as the exposed beach that we could see there. This was honestly one of my favorite things that we did on our cruise, just because we got to see some of the wilderness and explore some of the nature in Alaska. Not that we didn't do that in other ports, but we were truly in the wild here, as you can see, and we did find some places where there weren't any other people around, which was pretty special. The only downside is that it was raining the entire time, so like I said, we got soaked, but even with that, we saw some really cool sights, such as this totem pole, and like I said, about 30 other totem poles as we walked along this trail here. One of the other cool things that we were able to see is a salmon run. We did see some schools of salmon that were running up the river. When I was recording this, we can see that there were a few salmon that you can see in the water that were trying to swim upstream so that they could spawn. After our very rainy day on land, we came back on the ship, showered, and enjoyed an Italian meal. After our meal, we saw a show in the 270 Theater. And we ended our night with a drink in, honestly, one of our favorite places on the ship, which was the Solarium. The Solarium was an adult-only enclosed space at the very top and forward of the ship, so it afforded great views for sunset or sunrise or basically any other time we were going somewhere. We spent a lot of time in the Solarium. Our next day was day 4, which was Skagway, and this was one of the days that I was most excited about for a reason that you'll see here in a minute. It was absolutely gorgeous when we made it to Skagway, although it was a little cloudy, which had us a little bit worried, because this is the day that we were going to take our helicopter tour. Ultimately, it didn't matter. It burned off enough where we were able to get in our helicopter and take off and go to the glacier that we were going to, but we were worried for a little bit. Here we are taking off in our helicopter out of the port area. It was absolutely incredible, and it was beautiful. This is one of the most awe-inspiring things I've probably ever seen in my life, where we had just these 5,000-foot mountains that were rising out of the water. It was truly, truly awe-inspiring. Now we could see the glacier from our helicopter that we were landing on, obviously, and right in front of that glacier was a huge pool of just this silt and mud where the glacier had receded. We can see the walls of this canyon. They were relatively smooth, but they were also very scratched, which is not something that I'd ever seen before, and that was because the glacier was receding, and when it recedes, it obviously digs out the valley and digs out the rocks around it. The glacier that we're landing on is the Mead Glacier in Alaska, and it was the closest glacier to Skagway. Once we landed, the helicopters did take off to get another group of tourists to bring to the glacier. And so the flight time was about 40 minutes. In that, they took 20 minutes to go back to get more people, 20 minutes to come back to the glacier. And so on the glacier, we had about 40 minutes to explore. It was a little nerve-wracking seeing those helicopters fly off and leave us on the glacier, though. But we had plenty to do. The glacier was, again, one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen in my life. As we can see here, it was incredibly blue, which was not a color that I expected. You can see all of this different dirt and moss and things in the actual ice, but the ice itself was still so incredibly blue here. Now, one of the most interesting things that they told us about the glacier is that it takes about 100 feet of snow, of compacted snow, to make 1 foot of glacier ice. And so you can imagine we were standing on about 300 foot of glacier ice. So the thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of snow that had to fall over thousands and thousands of years to actually make the glacier that we were standing on. A little bit further, we are going to fly over the glacier in its entirety, and there is one spot where the glacier is about a mile deep. And so this glacier is not making any new ice, it is just receding, but there are places in Alaska that are making new glaciers because up in the high mountains, they are getting hundreds of feet of snow. Now, also on the glaciers, there are all obviously these huge crevasses that can go down hundreds and hundreds of feet all the way to the rock below. And so this is not something he wanted to get too close to, but it was incredible to see. One of the coolest things that we got to do, literally and figuratively, is drink glacier water. And so you can see that there's a clear stream of water that was running through. They put some rocks for our hands because the ice would cut up our hands, but we could lay down on the ice and actually dip our face into the glacier water. It was delicious, cold, and a little sweet, oddly enough. Another cool thing that they told us is that these they stay out there in this tent during the day, and the tent will prevent some of the ice from being melted. You'll see these other pads, though, where the tent was. They say they have to move the tent every 3 days or so because that is how much the glacier is melting. Thankfully, our helicopters did come back for us. At this point, we were shivering pretty hard. While the temperature in town was 50s, 60s, out on the glacier, it was a lot closer to 30s. So we were ready to get in a nice warm helicopter and get back to town. Here we are flying over the actual ice field of the glacier, which was absolutely massive. And we'll also see that it goes in many different directions here. So one of the things that our pilot told us is that this glacier does actually connect with the Mendenhall Glacier, which we see in Juneau a little bit later in the video. And you are able, if you ever wanted to take about 2 weeks and you could get on the glacier and you could hike over to Juneau. I don't think anybody has ever done that. He didn't mention it, but it is possible because a lot of these ice fields connect to each other in the high mountains of Alaska. Now, we were lucky because it was very cloudy earlier in the day, and so we were thinking that we were going to have to come back the way we came, which is a pretty view, but this way is much better. So the clouds lifted, and we were actually able to go up and over the mountains back to Skagway here. After flying up and over the mountains, we were coming back into town, where I got some great shots of the cruise ships here. Now, when coming back into town, our pilot did mention that we were going to have to kind of fly over the cruise ships and then make a hard left turn back into the helicopter port, which we'll see here. So this is a hard left turn. It was almost like a roller coaster ride. It was pretty exhilarating. With that, we returned our gear, which was some crampons and a life vest, and the helicopters took off to get some more people to and from the glacier. After that, we walked into town and found a meal. This was one of the stops where we had crab legs. Talia was very happy, and I had some fried fish. It was delicious. After that, we walked around the town of Skagway and saw some of the most famous buildings, like the Red Onion Saloon, which was a brothel back in the day, and this building, which was a fraternity building, a fraternal order of men. And so after that, we walked around the town. It consisted of a lot of different t-shirt shops. There was some cool buildings as well that we saw. And then after that, we made our way back to the ship. Now, we were really lucky here because the ship did back into town, and so from our balcony we were able to see the ship and any other ships that we had in port, including this Disney ship. Once that we were done in port, though, we sailed away, as you can see here, and it was one of the most gorgeous sailways that I've ever seen in my life. Now, for our day 6 in the morning, we were at the Tracy Arm Ford, and it did have a glacier here. It was a very small glacier, as we'll see in a minute, but we were cruising through the ford, which was absolutely beautiful because of the steep walls that the glacier had cut out here. We were lucky because we got to do a helicopter to a glacier, but not everybody is so lucky, so the cruise does generally stop at one glacier or another, so that everybody can see the glacier. While cruising through this, as you can see, there were some big chunks of ice in the water. Definitely not as much as earlier in the season because we were here pretty late in the season, and so a lot of that had melted, but there were still some pretty significant chunks, and that is the Tracy Arm glacier that we're seeing. Now, we were here pretty early, about 6:37 a.m., so not everybody was up and about off of their balconies. You'll see that the crowd is pretty sparse here, but we woke up to see the glacier because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, the ship was only there for about 20 minutes. It spun to the right, it spun to the left, and then after that, it hightailed it out of there because we had to make it to Juneau by the afternoon. As you can see here again, there was a lot of ice in the water. It was pretty cold viewing the glacier, so we made sure to bundle up. Now, in the afternoon, we made it to Juneau. This was our day 6 itinerary here. As we were cruising into Juneau, again, just like everywhere else in Alaska, it was absolutely gorgeous. Once we made it to Juneau, we were docked pretty close to town, which is always good. It was not very many steps off of the boat to the pier and then to the bus that was going to take us to the excursion destinations that we were taking today. One thing about Juneau that is very similar to some of the other Alaskan towns is that you can see it's right off the water, but it is backed up by these mountains. So not a lot of room to expand where we were. Like I said, once off the ship, they put us on a bus and they were taking us to the Mendenhall Glacier and Visitor Center. So we went through eastern Juneau to get there, and this is some of the houses that we see on our way. Once at the Mendenhall Glacier, I should say, the clouds did clear up a bit and we could see the Mendenhall Glacier in the distance. This is footage from the visitor center, which is kind of up above, and then we can see the lake that is in front of the glacier as well. Now, we were viewing the glacier from pretty far away, and so we wanted to get a little bit of a closer view. Specifically, this track leads us to Nugget Falls, which is a huge waterfall that is based off of some of the snow and the glacier melt that is coming down from higher in the mountains. And we can see here that this is a really nice trail, really easy trail, but it does get us back into the Alaskan nature. So it was a really awesome time to take this walk and then see a great waterfall at the end of it. And of course, the rest of the family was on this excursion as well, so we were all taking a hike together. Now, once we made it to the falls, we could go out to almost a little peninsula that was pretty far out there, where we could get pretty close to the falls, enough to definitely feel the rush of water and the spray of water in our faces here. So it was pretty awesome. Along the way, we did see all of these rocks and different boulders that have been carved out by the glacier itself, by the Mendenhall Glacier, over the thousands and thousands of years that it's been retreating at this spot. Once done at the Mendenhall Glacier, they put us back on the bus, and we actually had a second activity during our excursion, which was whale watching here. So once we did that, we took another 20-minute bus ride. They took us to a boat here, and once we got on the boat, we sailed out into the bay. I think that we were incredibly lucky when we were doing this whale watching tour because it was so nice out. Temperatures were in about the upper 50s, lower 60s, which does not always happen in Juneau. Out in the distance, what you're seeing are actually orcas, wild orcas. They have both orcas that are transient orcas or orcas that come from other places and come to Juneau to feed during the summer. They also have permanent resident orcas here. Regardless, our guides told us that they only see orcas about 10% of the time, about 1 in 10 trips that they take. So we were incredibly lucky to see this pod of orcas when we did. And like I said, the weather was just absolutely amazing while we were out on the boat. After we had spotted these orcas for quite a while, our captain decided to take us in a different direction because she thought she saw something over on the horizon, and it turns out she did. It turns out she did see a humpback whale that we followed for quite a while here. Humpback whales are known for, obviously, their tail flips as they go down, dive down into the water. Generally, before those tail flips, though, they come up, they breach the surface, and they blow water out of their hull 3 or 4 times. So you can really see the spout, the water that is blown out of their hull, and then you'll see the tail come up and then flip back down into the water as they dive down to feed. We followed this whale for quite a while. We saw it do this about 2 or 3 times, and then after that, we didn't see it for quite some time, so we assumed that it had dived pretty deep, or it swam off in a different direction, and we couldn't find it. But we were able to see it, and we can see one final tail dive here. This was a different humpback whale that we saw over closer to the shore. And with that, our final tail flip, they put us back on the bus. And we were able to sail away from Juneau. Now, we saw some incredible sights this day. One of the sights that we saw at night, this night though, was the Northern Lights. We could only see it through our camera, but taking pictures of the sky, we were able to see some of the aurora. Now, day 6 was just a cruising day. We were making our way back to Seattle, and so this day we just had on the ship where we decided to play some board games. We did a little bit of trivia. This is a Disney trivia, Disney Name That Tune trivia, so we were listening to Disney songs here, and in general, just enjoying the ship. One of the cool things that we did actually was pass our sister ship, which was Anthem of the Seas, and so we were making our way back to port. They were coming from port, and they said it was actually pretty rare that they saw each other because they generally don't have offset days that they see each other. And then, of course, we ended the night in one of our favorite places, which was the solarium, so that we could see the sunset and enjoy a drink together. Now, our final day was going to be in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. This is a stop that is kind of legally mandated because if a cruise ship leaves out of the United States, they have to stop in a foreign port, and this happens to be the foreign port that we stop in. Now, we don't have very much time in this port. We get in at about 5 o'clock, and we only have about until 8 o'clock or so to be in port. So we decided to walk to a little wharf that is relatively close to the ship so that we could have dinner. We could get some more, our final thing of fish and chips out on this wharf and enjoy the beautiful day. We enjoyed our fish and chips, which were both Pacific cod and halibut, both of them absolutely delicious. And then we walked around the town a little bit more. This is actually going into Victoria, which is the capital of this province and the capital of Canada. Unbeknownst to us, they were having a music festival in town, so it was quite busy, but this is actually the Capitol building and the lawn in front of it that we wanted to see. We did not stay for any of the festival, unfortunately. We had to get back to the ship because, like I said, we only had a few hours in port. But we did walk through, and we did see a variety of locals out, obviously, for this music festival. We did walk around to the back of the Capitol building, and here we saw some beautiful fountains, some monuments to firefighters, police officers, soldiers, things of that nature. And so we did get a little bit of history while we were walking around here. And so with that, with the sun setting, it was time to head back to our cruise ship. Our cruise was unfortunately over, but we had a great time. Thanks for watching this video.